And we always say that the more we know what it is, the better we can prepare for it. So as we're trying to explain what adversity is, as I already said, we're going to talk about major, not minor life events, major life events. And the reason we're doing that, especially for you as athletes, is because um, the whole thing we're talking about is mental toughness, right? And mental toughness, we've said that it can buffer those effects of adversity, but we need to understand adversity in the context of being an athlete. And that's what we're going to do today. All right, so I created this figure. This is the operational definition of MLE. Major life events are clearly timed, disrupt routines, and are perceived as personally significant and memorable by those who experience them. So you can see they're up top, and then the MLEs have been studied a lot in psychology, right? And we know there are differences and individual differences in terms of duration of those events, intensity of those events, and direction of those events. By direction, I mean it can be positive or negative, or otherwise stressful or not stressful. So you can have a major life event that may not add any stress on you. Some others do add stress, and this is what we're going to talk about today. So also, when we break it down into life domains, MLEs, and especially stressful MLEs, have been researched in terms of work, social relationship, and health. I put those two circles. This is where we're going to focus today. We're going to focus on the MLEs and talk about what it is, the characteristics. And then when we talk in terms of stressful events, we're going to talk about facts that have to do with stressful events that threaten health. All right. So here we have the characteristics of MLEs. That's a taxonomy. We have 9 characteristics. The first 5 have to do with the event itself, and the last 4 with the effects of the event. The first one is valence, which is the most robust predictor of individual differences, and it has to do with the extent an event is desirable or positive versus undesirable or negative. Challenge has to do with the amount of stress and anxiety associated with the event, predictability, how suddenly or predictably the event had occurred, external control, the extent to which the event was controlled or caused by others, extraordinariness, how ordinary or extraordinary the event was. And those are the first 5, which are characteristics of a major life event. Let's talk about characteristics that have to do with the effect of the event. Impact, which is a strong predictor. The extent to which one's life has changed due to the event. Emotion significance, that has to do with the emotional significance that has the event to you or your life. Change in worldviews, how much your views have changed after the event. And like an example, because this may not be very clear, is, you know, some people survive a plane crash and then all of a sudden they want to become monks, right? So it's about how much change in your worldviews as an effect had that event. And the last one is change in social status. So this has to do with your social status and dependence on others. For example, for an athlete, major injury, you can't play anymore. How does that change your social status when you're not an athlete anymore, right? So these are the 9 characteristics of MLE, so we can understand what a major life event is. All right, and then we said we're gonna talk about the stressful events, and more specifically the ones that are a threat to health. And for this part, I have combined information from 70 years of research, and we're going to talk about 10 fun facts that have to do with stressful life events that may threaten health, right? Which you can see over there, from definition all the way to the sex differences. So before we start, we need to define it. There are several definitions. We're going to use this one. Stressful life events provoke behavioral and physiological responses with possible negative implications for disease. All right, we have 10 fun facts about stressful life events that may threaten health. Number one, there's little agreement on the characteristics that define a stressful event, and we have 4 different theories. We have the adaptation one, all right, and in this one, it has to do with how much, as you can see, change is required for an average individual. So here, what's funny and what's interesting to know is that sometimes what we call a positive event, it may end up being a stressful event. How? Well, let's say you're getting signed for your favorite team, but that will require that you have to move to another state, right? That, yes, it is positive, but it creates a lot of stress, right? That's part of this theory. The second theory, which is the most commonly accepted, is about if you see it as harmful or threatening, and the imminence of that and the extent to which that event is controllable or not affects that perception. The third one is about, okay, this is stressful and I need this kind of resources to overcome it. Do I have them or not? If I think I don't, then it is a stressful event. And the last one is about interruption of major goals. And when we talk about major goals, we're talking about goals that are important in terms of identity, self-esteem, social status, physical well-being, and so on. Second fun fact, stressful events can impact most diseases, all right? How? There are different theories behind that. So we have affect regulation. So you have, an event can create anxiety, and anxiety can impact a disease. An event can create a health behavior. So if you get injured, you don't exercise, that will create or impact, actually not create a disease. We have hormones that we secrete like cortisol, very catabolic, right? Or other things that have to do with our nervous system, such as heightened sympathetic nervous system because of a stressful event. And we have a lot of data. Stressful events are associated with depression, CVD, infectious diseases, and cancer. Another fact, most people exposed to stressful events or traumatic events do not get sick. So stressful events, yes, they can impair health. But the majority of people, when something happens, will not get sick, whether we're talking about normative stressful events, something we expect like getting injured at some point in your career, right? Or something less common, getting injured that much that you have to stop playing. So you're a football player, because of concussions, you get TBI, you're out, right? So this is important for us because we're talking about mental toughness. Some stressful events do not have the same effect on people. And one explanation is because they are more resilient. So, for example, they have higher levels of mental toughness. And that's why we're also here and we're talking about these things. The fourth fact, stressful events do not fall randomly from the sky. So yes, we have natural disasters, but this fact here shows us we can control some of the stressful events. So think about it as we talk about that. So in which kind of environment are you putting yourself? What kind of personal characteristics you may have? We talked about pessimism, right? Pessimism is associated with more stressful events than optimism. Now, if you choose the wrong team, that may put you in a situation that stressful events may happen, but that was your choice to go into that team. And if you see it in terms of sequences, right, a wrong team may lead to you getting dropped, right? But there was a part that you could have controlled. Or we're talking, so that's another interesting thing. Something that happens to you or somebody close to you may affect other people in your family. So we have chronic unemployment affects the children, right? So that's another thing we need to think about this, that we can control and it's not all random. Fact 5, stressful events may not cause disease for healthy people. So it is really hard to define when a disease starts. So stressful events, we say they're not gonna start it, right? However, what's happening is if you are already sick and your system is already vulnerable, there is some kind of equilibrium, right? And then a stressful event comes and make things worse. That's what we know so far. So 5 more facts. Fact 6, certain types of stressful events are particularly potent. So the events that may happen in our life, they may be different times or different intensities, or what we're trying to say here that is very important is if it really threatens something that is important for you, not me, but for you, that will have a more effect on you. We're talking about individual differences. All right, fact 7, we'll have 2 slides for this one. Chronic stressful events are worse than acute ones, except when they're not. So in general, we say that the higher the probability, the longer the exposure, the higher the probability of a stressor being present at times of vulnerability. And this has to do with timing. We're going to talk about timing in fact 9. But also, the longer the exposure, the more the wear and the tear of the body, in terms of we have more permanent changes in emotional, physiological, and behavioral responses. 2 things are important here. And you need to remember duration. When we talk about duration, yes, we can talk about chronic stressors, right? There's a torn ACL, and that's a disability. You can't play. That's a chronic stressor that really affects you. Also, we have intermittent ones. So you may have an injury that comes and goes and comes and goes and comes and goes. That's again considered chronic. That will affect again your performance, right? And also, again, we can see it in terms of having more than one event may trigger other events. So you lose your job. Let's say you were working for a professional team, right? You're playing for a professional team. You get dropped. That leads to a divorce, which leads to alcoholism, and that leads to CKD. So that's again something that we consider as chronic stressful event. One more thing, 2 more things about chronic events. Yes, there's a thing that's called adaptation hypothesis. And it says that, when something keeps happening to you, you'll most likely adapt and you'll be fine, right? But in some chronic events, we may not adapt. An example is the intermittent events that I talked about before, like something coming and going, and again. It inhibits habituation, so it inhibits adaptation. And yes, acute events matter. Yes, it's something that happens instantly, but we need to think of them not only about the actual event, right? Okay, I had an injury. Acute events may have chronic side effects, right? Chronic side effects in terms of appraisal process, affective responses, physical effects. Yes, I get injured today, but for how long is this going to affect me? If it's going to affect me for a long time, that injury is considered a chronic stressful event. Fact number 8, multiple events may be more potent than individual ones or may not. So here we don't have a lot of information. In general, we say yes, the more events, the greater the risk. But we don't really know if those events have to be, how major they have to be in order to add on our stress, if they need to go over a specific threshold to be considered that they add on our stress, or if they have to be happening at the same time and in a way they have to be connected, like clustered together. So you're getting dropped from a team, then you have to move away. So now we have 2 events that are coming together. So this is a multiple event, but it's a cluster one. Fact number 9, stressful events vary in frequency and potency as a function of where an individual is in the life course. And this is about timing. Timing is very important, okay? And I give here an example of losing an important penalty kick in soccer, right? We expect this will happen, right? But what if it happens in the very first important penalty kick that you will be assigned? How is that going to affect you? Would that be different if you lost the 11th or the 20th instead of just the first one? Probably yes. Also, there are sensitive periods. Kids, children, If events happen, like, okay, you expect the death of a parent, it will happen eventually, right? When you're 70 years old. But if it happens way earlier, that will have more potency as an effect. And the last fact is that different types of stressful events influence men and women. So men and women, if we see them in terms of gender, they're different. And because they're different, they will be exposed to different stressful events. And I give some examples here. So the best example that we have is the differential vulnerability in depression risk. We do know that women have higher. And that's about it about overcoming adversity. These are the take-home points. MT can buffer the deleterious effects of adversity while in pursuit of goals. The more we understand what adversity is, the better we can prepare for it. These are the characteristic ones, the characteristic of major life events. There are 9. Balance, challenge, predictability, external control, and extraordinariness have to do with the event. And the last 4, impact, emotional significance, change in worldviews, and change in social status, have to do with the effect of the event. Major life events can be positive or negative, and stressful life events predict increases in severity and progression of several diseases.